Good afternoon. My name is Mary Richardson, and I'm joined by Hagu Solomon Carey, Bonnie Kim, Roberto Luna, and Betty Barberena with Los Angeles City Planning. I will be presenting information on the proposed permanent alfresco ordinance. First, I would like to encourage all participants to select a language using the interpretations button at the bottom of your screen. Roberto will make some announcements in Spanish for our Spanish-speaking participants.
Tenemos traducción en español disponible usando el botón de interpretación en su pantalla. Si está llamando por teléfono, no podrá escuchar la traducción en español. Si necesita traducción en español, por favor únase por la aplicación de Zoom. El seminario web será traducido en español por Betty. Por favor, use el botón de interpretación para seleccionar español.
Thank you, Roberto. The first half of the meeting will be the presentation, and the second half is reserved for questions from participants. If you have a question during the presentation, please submit your question in the Q&A box, and we will provide an answer during the second portion of the meeting. If you have technical issues with Zoom, please submit a comment in the Q&A box to notify city staff. All questions and comments made today are informational. If you wish to submit a formal public comment, please save the date and attend the virtual public hearing on Wednesday, February 8th, 2023 at 6 p.m. to provide your testimony on record. Alternatively, you may provide a written comment by sending an email to alfresco.planning@lacity.org, or a hard copy can be mailed to Mary Richardson, Department of City Planning, 200 North Spring Street, room 701, Los Angeles, California, 90012. Please include planning case number CPC 2022-8179 CA in all submitted correspondence. Comments for consideration in the staff report may be submitted through February 24th, 2023 at 5 p.m. A link to register for the public hearing in February, the email, physical address, and case number has been added to the chat. Now, let's get started with an overview of the proposed permanent alfresco ordinance. You can also follow along by downloading the presentation in both English and Spanish from our website, which has also been linked in the chat. LA Alfresco is a temporary permit program that was implemented to help restaurants during the year that they were closed for dine-in service. Launched in May 2020 under an emergency order, LA Alfresco streamlined requirements and approvals across city departments for outdoor dining on private property and the public right-of-way on parking lots, sidewalks, and in the street. In addition to giving restaurants economic support, the temporary program promoted public health by making it possible for LA residents to enjoy restaurant dining in a location that minimized the risks of exposure to the coronavirus. For these reasons, and because outdoor dining has been very popular, the City Council has directed the Planning Department to prepare an ordinance that would codify permission for outdoor dining. Restaurant operators may apply for temporary alfresco permits through February 28th, 2023, at which point the emergency order under which the program was approved will expire and no new temporary permits will be issued. Restaurants will then have a 6-month grace period to continue providing outdoor dining through August 28th, 2023, while they apply for new permanent permits. The success of the temporary alfresco program, as well as the City Council instruction, has led to the Planning Department's efforts to prepare an amendment to the zoning code which would allow for alfresco dining on private property, such as parking lots, and replace the temporary permit for regulating and permitting outdoor dining. Under this proposed ordinance, all applicants would comply with the zoning, building, and fire codes. In collaboration with planning, the Department of Transportation and the Bureau of Engineering are preparing separate permitting processes for outdoor dining in the public right-of-way, which we will also cover in the coming slides. Today's presentation, however, is largely focused on the alfresco ordinance for outdoor dining on private property. LA Alfresco recognizes 4 different types of outdoor dining. Sidewalk dining refers to outdoor dining on the sidewalk, which is part of the public right-of-way. Curbside dining refers to outdoor dining that occupies the parking lane next to the curb and serves one restaurant. It is in the public right-of-way. In-street dining refers to outdoor dining in a street that may occupy several lanes of traffic and serves multiple restaurants. It is also in the public right-of-way. Outdoor private property dining refers to outdoor dining on private property spaces, including parking lots, courtyards, plazas, patios, certain portions of yards, and rooftops. At last count, there were over 2,900 restaurants who are participating in the LA Alfresco program. The outdoor dining provided under this program is configured in many different ways. According to a survey of 308 participants in the LA Alfresco program, 36.5% of participants offer outdoor dining exclusively on private property spaces. 24.9% use a combination of private property spaces and the public right-of-way. 19.5% use a combination of various public spaces, including the sidewalk, the curbside, and in the street. And 19.2% use the sidewalk exclusively.
Thank you for your patience, everyone. We are going to pause momentarily to allow the Spanish channel interpretations to catch up. They're a bit behind. In the meantime, feel free to enter any questions you have so far into the Q&A box. That is the only way we will be responding to questions. Unfortunately, we will not be using any raised hands features for today. So again, enter all questions into the Q&A box. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. We'll begin and continue the presentation.
Activity in the right-of-way and activity on private property are regulated by different departments. The Bureau of Engineering oversees outdoor dining on the sidewalk, and the Department of Transportation oversees outdoor dining in the street. Restaurant operators who offer outdoor dining on the sidewalk or in the street will have to reapply for their permanent revocable permit to encroach in the public right-of-way. The Department of Building and Safety and the Department of City Planning oversee outdoor dining on private property. The Department of Building and Safety handles by right permits or permits for applications which comply with the proposed alfresco ordinance standards. And the Department of City Planning handles discretionary approvals or approvals for applications which do not comply with the proposed alfresco ordinance standards. It should be noted that applicants will also need fire department approvals. Restaurant operators who offer outdoor dining on private property and in the public right-of-way will need to get permits for both types of outdoor dining. Outdoor dining on private property that complies with proposed alfresco standards will require new by right permits from the Department of Building and Safety. Restaurant operators whose outdoor dining on private property does not comply with proposed alfresco standards will have to apply for a conditional use permit, CUP, with city planning. Restaurants who serve alcohol will have to apply for a conditional use permit for alcohol service, or an administrative clearance from the Restaurant Beverage Program, RBP, from the Department of City Planning. Restaurants which serve alcohol, either on private property or in the public right-of-way, will need to also reapply for permits to continue serving alcohol with the California Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control. The proposed alfresco ordinance has revised the definition of an outdoor dining area to facilitate a more streamlined permitting process and expand the areas where outdoor dining is allowed. In the Los Angeles Municipal Code today, outdoor dining is limited to ground floor restaurants and may not be larger than 50% of the dining area of the ground floor restaurant. The proposed ordinance will allow outdoor dining on any floor of a building where a restaurant is located and has no maximum or minimum square footage requirements. Standards for outdoor dining today currently differ by zone. The proposed ordinance will provide general standards which are the same in any zone where outdoor dining is allowed. Today, outdoor dining is not allowed by right in parking lots. The proposed alfresco ordinance will allow outdoor dining by right in parking lots when compliant with all applicable code requirements. The proposed alfresco ordinance will offer restaurants who provide outdoor dining relief from certain parking regulations. Outdoor dining areas are exempt from floor area calculations and do not trigger parking requirements. A maximum of 5 required automobile parking spaces, new or existing, may be replaced by an outdoor dining area. When parking is shared between multiple tenants on a lot, such as in a mini mall or a shopping center, a tenant may apply for the allowed parking reduction with signed and notarized proof of the property owner's permission. The total number of required accessible parking spaces may not be reduced by an outdoor dining area. Site design standards for an outdoor dining area include the following. An outdoor dining area may be covered or uncovered. 50% of the perimeter of an outdoor dining area shall be fully open from the ground to the top of the structure, with the exception of a partial height wall. An outdoor dining area shall be designed and operated so that it may be used by people of all abilities. And an outdoor dining area and all the structures, furniture, and equipment within it shall be designed and operated so that it complies with building code and the fire code.
Hi, everyone. Thanks again for your patience. For pausing again to allow the Spanish channel to catch up. Thank you for your patience while we ensure our Spanish listeners get access to our presentation as well. In the meantime, always, again, please feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A box.
When an outdoor dining area is located on a surface parking lot or parking structure where cars are parked, barriers shall be installed to separate the two uses. If a parking lot is used entirely as an outdoor dining area and is not used to park cars, the parking lot shall be designed so that barriers block vehicular access from the roadway into the parking lot, but shall allow for direct pedestrian access from the parking lot to the sidewalk and/or roadway. The proposed alfresco ordinance contains standards to mitigate noise impacts of an outdoor dining area on residential neighborhoods. Hours of operation for outdoor dining areas are limited to the same hours of operation as the kitchen facilities of the associated restaurant. Hours of operation for an outdoor dining area which abut or are across an alley from an A or R zone lot are limited to hours of operation between 7 a.m. and 11 p.m. Outdoor dining which abuts an A or R zone lot must be at least 20 feet from the A or R zone. RAS zones are not included as R zones. Music, dancing, live entertainment, TV screens and speakers, private events, and cover charges are not allowed in an outdoor dining area. There will be many opportunities to learn more about the proposed alfresco ordinance and provide input. In addition to today's virtual webinar with Q&A, a staff-level public hearing on February 8th will take place from 6 to 8 p.m. And we are aiming to present the ordinance and staff recommendations to the City Planning Commission in the spring of 2023. The deadline for submitting public comments is 5 p.m. February 24th, 2023. This is to ensure that staff will have sufficient time to incorporate feedback received into the staff recommendation report. Comments submitted after February 24th will continue to be added to the project file for consideration, but will not be guaranteed to be incorporated into the staff recommendation report. Please include planning case number CPC 2022-8179-CA in all submitted correspondence. You can find more information on our website at planning.laCity.org/plans-policies/proposed-land-use-regulations. You can also join the interested parties email list or ask questions and submit comments by emailing alfresco.planning@lacity.org. You may also submit a hard copy of your comments to Mary Richardson, Department of City Planning, 200 North Spring Street, room 701, LA, California 90012.
For joining us here today and for your interest in the proposed ordinance for the alfresco outdoor dining program on private property. We are very much looking forward to hearing your questions. Many of them have come in already in this coming portion of our program. Please note, as the presentation shared, this meeting focuses on outdoor dining on private property. However, if you have questions on dining in the public right-of-way, we do have staff available from the Department of Engineering, Bureau of Engineering here to answer questions, but unfortunately our expert from the Department of Transportation is unable to join for today's event. But that being said, all comments regarding the alfresco program on the sidewalk, curbside, or in the street, which are all in the public right-of-way, will be forwarded to the Bureau of Engineering, or BOE, and the Department of Transportation, or DOT. If you would like to contact them directly about your questions or comments on sidewalk dining, BOE can be reached by submitting a customer service request at engpermits.lacity.org. Let me restate that, engpermits.lacity.org. And for comments or questions on curbside or in-street dining, DOT can be emailed at alfresco@lacity.org. That's alfresco@lacity.org. These links have been shared in the chat and are also up on the screen. With that said, I'll hand it back over to Mary.
Thanks, Hagu. We will now begin the Q&A portion of the meeting. If you have not submitted your questions yet, please do so in the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen now. If we are not able to answer your question today, please reach out to planning staff with your questions by emailing alfresco.planning@lacity.org. To ensure that attendees who are listening by phone can also hear the submitted questions, we will now read the questions out loud. Please access your preferred audio language by clicking the interpretation button and select either English or Spanish translation. Now, Bonnie will help me review and answer submitted questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Mary. We have got some good questions here. So I see a few folks have answered a similar question. When and where can the permanent permits be applied for?
That will not be formally until August 28th. But if you wanted to get started, you might contact the Restaurant and Small Business Express program, which is part of Building and Safety. It's a concierge service. They do case management, and you get an appointment with them. They look at your application. They tell you, well, you're going to need this, you're going to need that. You're going to need an approval here and there. These are the forms that you're going to need. And it's a back and forth. It's a series of meetings. And I'm not sure if they're set up at this moment in time for you to start contacting them, but we're going to facilitate that and make sure that if you want to get in line and be some of the first people to get an appointment with them, we're going to look into that.
Great. Okay, I have another question here that's maybe more relevant for the public right-of-way. We've got a few of those questions. Somebody's asking, I would like to add public right-of-way use to my temporary permit. How would I do this? Perhaps Tanat, do you have any information you could share?
Sure. So if the applicant would like to apply for LA Fresco for the temporary permit, they can do so now, right? And they can indicate that this is for sidewalk dining or curbside dining and so forth. But if they would like to begin the permanent revocable permit process for sidewalk dining, they can also do so by visiting our website at engpermits.org or engpermits.lacity.org, I'm sorry. And they can choose to apply for revocable permit for the permanent sidewalk dining portion. However, I recommend that the applicant should apply for the temporary LA Fresco permit first, so that they would just need to pay for the reduced fee when the transition happens.
Great. Thank you so much, Tanat. I've got another question that may be a two-parter or relevant to both the private property and public right of way relative to ADA and accessibility. So we got asked, does an alfresco dining exempt from ADA? And then separately, how would the city be enforcing ADA violations that may be happening on city sidewalks?
Okay,
So
well, go ahead, Tanat.
I'm sorry. For the public right of way portion, we do have an enforcement agency, and that the enforcement team falls under the Bureau of Street Services or Streets LA. So if constituents find that some sidewalk dining is violating ADA requirements, they can report to, they can either call 311 or contact our Fresco. We are working closely with all of the teams, and we can verify whether or not that table or share is, whether or not they have an existing active permit, and if so, whether or not they followed the plan that we approved if they had an existing permit.
Yes, and the ADA regulations would now be applied also to the outdoor dining on private property. And that involves how much space you would need to have around a table and a chair, and pedestrian access. There's a certain, it's a lot of it has to do with spacing. And for enforcement, that would be building and safety. They have code enforcers. I don't have the direct contact information, but that should be easy to find on the building and safety website.
Great. Thank you, Mary and Tanat. Okay, we've got a couple of questions kind of related to maybe eligibility criteria and where alfresco can happen. So the first is, will the program apply to bars that don't serve food as well?
No, this is for restaurants. They can be restaurants who have an alcohol service license or not, either way, but no, it's not applying to bars.
Okay, and then we got a question about, or more maybe a comment about, you mentioned rooftops for the alfresco. Could you speak on that a little, Mary?
Yes, we understand that alfresco on rooftops is very popular, and we want to support that. The restaurant that is associated with the outdoor dining would either have to be also on the rooftop or the floor below. And yeah, I understand that maybe there are some conditional uses right now, or well, actually right now there's not a lot of regulation. In some instances now, the restaurant might be on the ground floor, and the outdoor dining will be on the rooftop. But we are looking to have the restaurant be contiguous with the outdoor dining.
Great, thank you, Mary. Okay, we've got a couple of questions about some of the proposed standards that would apply to outdoor dining. So one question is, could you please clarify the partial wall aspect of the outdoor dining area? Are you saying that if an outdoor area has no roof, then it's allowed to have a fence around the perimeter? And if it has a roof, then 50% of it can't have any kind of wall? Perhaps could you speak to that kind of enclosure standards?
Yeah, I think the roof would also count in calculating the 50% figure. And we're not being more specific about exactly how that has to be configured, but we definitely want to maintain a fair degree of openness. We don't want to see outdoor dining that is fully enclosed or even minimally enclosed. We want to see something that is significantly open. And we haven't really been more specific in terms of exactly how that would be configured, other than the partial height wall.
Right, and just to add, the partial height wall could be up to 42 inches, I believe. And then we got some questions about the parking relief. I think I saw somebody asking, so am I understanding that outdoor dining in a parking lot is limited to 5 parking spaces? Are there any exceptions?
You can displace 5 of your required parking spaces with outdoor dining. If you exceed that, then you would have to apply for a conditional use permit. But in some situations, some operators already have more parking spaces than are required. So in that case, they could still use those spaces.
Great. Okay. On the I guess on the topic of permits, we got asked, will you speak to what permits will look like from Department of Building and Safety and Fire Department? Also, could you speak to what a new discretionary planning approval for alcohol would look like if the new alfresco patio to be permitted is not included under the existing CUP?
Oh, the kind of building permits that we could anticipate would be an altered building permit. If it's not, building and safety makes a distinction between what they consider to be furniture. Furniture that would be things that can be moved around and are not like permanent fixtures. And some of those they would consider to be a building and they would need a building permit, and others might be something less so that would be an altered building permit. And some I don't think that they would even review, that they wouldn't think it would be necessary to do a full-fledged engineering structural review. And yeah, we should have someone here from Building and Safety to get into the fine details on that question. And the other one about the conditional, about the alcohol and the CUB, could you repeat that part of the question?
Sure. I was generally asking, what would be the process? What type of planning approval would be required if, an operator was proposing an alfresco outdoor dining area that was not covered under their original CUP?
That would be a new CUB. They would have to go back and start again and reapply. Any kind of, if anything that you're doing right now under the temporary program is different from what you were originally approved for with your original CUB, that is going to require that you reapply and start over with your CUB.
Well, and maybe we can add a little bit of nuance as well. There's a certain level of modification that's allowed under a plan approval to a conditional use permit. So I believe the threshold is 20%. So, if your expansion or modification of your service area or seating and occupancy is under that threshold, you may be able to qualify for a plan approval instead of a full on new CUB. And then also with the recently adopted restaurant beverage program, if you meet the eligibility criteria, there's also a sort of ministerial approval process that could be pursued depending on your operations and if they meet the criteria of the RBP program. So there are a few pathways forward for those operators who are seeking to kind of come into compliance with our alcohol regulations. Okay, sorry. So thanks for that, Mary. Let's see. I think we have a question for BOE here. If a planning entitlement identifies the width of a sidewalk within private property, can a dining permit from BNS only be provided for sidewalk area in private property? I'm not sure I fully understand the question. Tanat, any insight you can shed?
I'm not sure if I also understand the question, but we have seen some cases where it's possible that a portion of, let's say, sidewalk dining, a portion of the table falls under private property and public right of way in the sidewalk portion. Now, in terms of our review for a bit of engineering, we only focus on the public right of way. So we will review the portion that falls within the sidewalk portion. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, and thanks, Tanat. I think, yeah, if for any of you who submitted a question today and you felt you wanted some additional clarification or follow-up, please feel free to email planning directly at alfresco.planning@lacity.org, particularly for those who have questions that may be specific to your particular project or a restaurant or a property. We would appreciate, the follow-up so we can look into any, specific criteria that may be relevant for a specific parcel or property. Okay, we have, going back to some general questions, we have a question: who will coordinate the different departments' ordinances, enforcement, and will budgets be increased?
We are going to be instituting bi-weekly meetings with all the different departments involved. This has been a very interesting and complex coordination effort. So we understand that we're going to be, as we move forward, we're going to be meet more frequently. And I think originally the direction was to have one portal and then once you got into that portal, there would be branches going off for private property, public right of way, and you would be routed to the department that is relevant to your application. I'm not that portal is not set up yet, and I really can't give you a definitive answer on that, but I know that was the initial direction.
Okay, the next question we have is related to the permit fees. Are there or will there be permit fees? If so, what are those fees? This may also be maybe a two-parter. Mayor, if you want to speak on the private property aspect, and Tanat, if you could speak to the permit fees on the public right-of-way.
I'm afraid I do not know the permit fees. Perhaps we can get back to the person asking the question. I do not know what the fee is.
Yeah, we don't know the specific dollar amounts, but it would be the standard kind of plan check fees that are charged at building and safety for any kind of building permit, certificate of occupancy.
For sidewalk dining, if the applicants already have active Fresco permits, when they transition, they only need to pay the transition fee or the special engineering fee, which is about $149. That's if the design meets the LA Fresco requirements, right? But if we determine that the design doesn't meet the LA Fresco requirements and it will need additional review hours, the BOE may charge additional hours, right? However, on the other hand, if applicants would like to apply for a permanent revocable permit for sidewalk dining, now the fee is going to be a tier 1 fee, which is around $600.
Great, thank you for that, Tanat. Okay, so we've got still a bunch of questions. This one is referencing or related to sidewalk vendors. So this new ordinance allows restaurants to expand into sidewalk areas and allow public access for passing through. Does this new ordinance stand for sidewalk vendors that are posed in front of the restaurants and block access? Well, maybe we can clarify the ordinance that planning is proposing that we described today only regulates private property outdoor dining. But I think we're working with Tanat and other colleagues in BOE to coordinate on the sidewalk dining piece. Any additional insight you could shed, Tanat?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, it was relative to restaurants that may expand into sidewalk areas and allow public access for passing through. Would the ordinance, I think, stand for sidewalk vendors that are posed in front of the, I believe, hopefully I'm not misinterpreting, it's asking if now that restaurants are allowed to expand into the sidewalk areas, would a sidewalk vendor that's in that sidewalk area, in front of the restaurant, I guess, constitute or qualify as a, al fresco on the sidewalk dining?
From my understanding, only restaurants can apply for al fresco. Sidewalk vending falls under a different jurisdiction, which is the Bureau of Street Services or Street LA.
Got it. Thank you, Tanat. Yeah, and just generally, we in planning are also looking into the topic of sidewalk vending as well, so that we can better understand, the various regulations that may or may not apply. Okay, I think another question related to the one of the design standards. So the presentation mentioned no more than 50% of the perimeter can be enclosed with a wall. Oh, a project that has a high parapet about 16 feet and would like to place an outdoor dining area on the roof. The parapet would completely surround the dining area. Would this be allowed, or would that 16-foot high parapet be considered a wall?
No, I think that we need to refine our language on that design standard. We're talking about a wall. The enclosure of that, what that refers to would be an outdoor dining structure. So the outdoor dining structure on top of the roof could be no more than 50% enclosed. Yeah, we understand that if you have an outdoor dining area inside an interior courtyard, or the situation that you're describing where you're on top of a roof with a parapet, we need to work on our language on that standard to clarify what we mean by that.
Okay, so we've got a couple of questions about the parking standards. So it's asking, how did we come up with the maximum of 5 parking stalls that may be replaced by outdoor dining in lieu of 6 or even 10 spaces? An additional follow-up, if there are multiple restaurants on the same property, could that number be multiplied by that number of restaurants?
That's a very good question. The way that we came up with that was it comes from a survey that was done of participants in the temporary program, and 79% of the restaurant operators in the temporary program were using 5 or fewer parking spaces. So that seemed like a good way to go. It gives some relief, but it's not an excessive amount, but it seems like it would meet the needs of most of the operators. And the question about, so if there were multiple operators who wanted to take advantage of this ordinance, they have to get permission from the property owner. So I think that would be a part of this. It seems like the property owner might have a feeling one way or another if they wanted to allow that many outdoor dining areas. So that would be my response.
Yeah, and perhaps we can add on just a bit that the standard is that, yeah, in a shared kind of parking lot situation, the tenants have to, come to an agreement with the property owner. But from the land use perspective, if the property owner sort of agreed to allow each tenant to take advantage of that parking relief, theoretically, each tenant has could potentially take advantage of up to 5 spaces if that was what was available for their space. But again, it's kind of depends on the property owner's permission. So it kind of works out, the city is trying to stay away from that and just allowing the kind of cap on total parking displaced. But it could be done, but it is available to each individual tenant with the permission of the property owner.
Yes, and I think this is a situation that we will see many times, because something like almost half of the restaurant operators are tenants, and so they are sharing parking situations with other tenants. This is very common.
Great. We've got another question relative to enforcement, I believe. So if issues arise from outdoor dining, what is the process for submitting complaints for restaurants who fall out of compliance with their CUP?
That would be contacting building and safety and getting the code enforcement staff coming out and reviewing what violations there are. There would be a citation and a notice to correct. I don't know if there's like a limit on the number of times that the notice to correct is issued. This is where we would need to have someone here from building and safety to outline that process.
Great, thanks, Mary. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions or several questions that are kind of asking what do we do with the temporary permits? Should we reapply if we already have one before that February 28th, date? Yeah, do I need to reapply for a new temporary permit, or does the one I currently have work? I guess I will just start by saying, the temporary permits are currently managed by LADOT, and unfortunately our colleague at LADOT was not available to attend today's webinar, but we will definitely be conveying sort of any of these relevant questions to them. I think from what we've heard, temporary permits, what we know definitively is that temporary permits will no longer be issued past February 28th. So if you are planning to reapply, we would encourage you to do so now before that date. And then what we've been told is that all permits will expire by August 28th of 2023. So that's what we can say on the temporary permit front, but we will be conveying sort of these questions to our colleagues over at DOT. I guess, Tanat, anything you might, any additional, info you have on the temporary permits?
From my understanding, the participants who already have the temporary permit, they should be receiving a notice saying that their permits have been extended. So basically, they should not need to apply for a new permit for the new extension.
Yes, my understanding is there's a grace period that will extend to August 28th. And after August 28th, the temporary permits are no longer valid. So that's why the operators should take advantage of this time to work on getting in touch with the restaurant Small Business and Restaurant Express program and getting in line for getting their permanent permits.
Right. Thank you for that additional clarification, Tanat and Mary. We've got a couple more questions about the CUP aspect. So for outdoor dining on private property that doesn't fully comply with the standards, is a CUP the entitlement that would allow deviations from the standards?
Yes, that would be the route to go. A CUP, the zoning administrator will consider the application and see if certain conditions were applied that they could approve a project. There's hearings, and there's no guarantee that the zoning administrator will grant the approval, but there's a process where the approval could be considered.
Okay, thanks, Mary. So next question is, who decides how many parking spots you can take up? Can anyone do up to 5, or is there some sort of formula that determines how many spots you can use?
It depends on what is your requirement. Depend on how many parking spaces are required, but everyone is allowed to go up to replace a maximum of 5 required parking spaces.
Great. We have a question about, could you elaborate on an administrative approval in lieu of a CUP?
We have an administrative approval process for alcohol services. That's the RBP program. But no, we don't have an administrative version of that for outdoor dining.
Right, thanks, Mary. And maybe I misinterpreted the question. We're assuming you're asking about the administrative approval of the alcohol service in lieu of a CUB that's needed for the alcohol service. And as Mary mentioned, that would be the restaurant beverage program administrative clearance, where if you meet, the standard eligibility criteria and all of the standard conditions, then you could get your planning approval ministerially instead of having to go through a full public hearing and discretionary approval process. Okay, we did get one question about, or a couple of questions about specific plans. So just generally, how would this ordinance affect specific plan areas? And then we got one question parking requirements in the Venice specific plan. As an example, Venice specific plan requires parking for service floor area. Would this ordinance supersede those requirements?
Yes, our initial direction with the temporary program was to override the specific plans. And there are so many of the operators are in specific plans. I think there's something like over 600. So this is a big issue that we are dealing with. I know that several of the specific plans, they already have a section for providing parking relief that is in the specific plan. So it might be possible for us just to make some strategic minor revision or addition to that parking relief section. But it's more complicated than that because not all of the specific plans do have parking relief. So this is something that we're working on, but because so many of our restaurant operators with outdoor dining are in the specific plans, we felt like we had to override specific plans if we want to move forward with outdoor dining on a permanent basis.
Great, thanks for that, Mary. We have a question about sidewalk dining. Do we need to transition existing sidewalk that's not alfresco dining to the alfresco? I guess, sidewalk dining?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, the question is, do we need to transition existing sidewalk that's not al fresco dining to al fresco?
So, if there's any sidewalk dining that is not currently under al fresco and not under revocable permit, that means it may not have a permit, right? So I would recommend to apply for the al fresco permit or the temporary permit. This way, when the time comes, that sidewalk dining can transition to the permanent sidewalk dining revocable permit.
Great. Thank you so much, Tanat. I think we can squeeze in maybe one or two more questions. If we have outdoor dining on the sidewalk in front of the store and private property in the back, would this require two separate permits? Could we include both in one permit?
No, that will be two separate permits. They'll need to get the revocable permit from BOE, and they will need to get the building permits from Building and Safety.
Great. Okay. Let's see. I'll try to get some questions on topics that we maybe haven't been answered yet. Got a question. Let's see. Would food trucks be able to apply for an LA alfresco permit?
Food trucks, I think that's the sidewalk vending program. Tanat, would you agree?
I agree. For sidewalk dining, we only accept restaurants or food establishments with underlying properties.
Okay, and then I think maybe the last question we can answer in the time we have remaining. We've got a question about where to begin discussions with ABC for the state license. What would we recommend restaurants discuss with ABC with regard to permitting for outdoor alcohol services? Should they wait for the city to complete this ordinance?
I think they would be better advised to wait until we've completed the ordinance. And then we can advise them more completely after the ordinance is adopted. Okay, thanks for that, Mary. Okay, I think we have time for maybe one more. We have, is the new CUP discretionary? If so, who could oppose the CUP? Who could oppose the CUP? Well, when there's a hearing, comments are accepted from anyone who wants to submit comments, but I'm not sure exactly what the questioner is asking, but that's the whole point of the CUP process, is for the zoning administrator to make an informed decision based on all the comments received. Okay, great. Maybe I see a few more trickling in. Is there a requirement for not allowing parking reductions when the proposed alfresco is within a certain distance of residential uses? No, it's across the board. You can displace 5 required parking spaces. Okay, great. And I know we still have several questions remaining, but I just want to do a time check. It is 12:59. So let me hand it over back to Mary to close us out for today. Okay. Well, thank you. And those are the questions that we were able to cover today. If you have any additional questions or comments, please email alfresco.planning@lacity.org. And please register for the public hearing on February 8th at 6 p.m. through the link in the chat. Thanks for your time.
And just as a reminder, in the chat, we dropped a link to the recording of today's presentation as well as the slideshow. So those can be downloaded at your convenience. Thank you all.